Hi there, BookTube! My name is Christina. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with a vloggishly filmed wrap-up of Nonfiction November. And the reason why it's vloggishly filmed is just because I'm lazy today and I didn't want to pull out the tripod and everything, so it's messy, it is what it is. I'm so sorry, but I really wanted to film a wrap-up, even if I still have like technically 2 days before the end of November, but this video will be probably published when uploaded when it will be already December, so yeah, it's a mess, but who cares. I'm here to talk about some great books and some not very great ones that I read during the month of November. And again, Nonfiction November is a BookTube event. It's a community experience during which we all try to read as much nonfiction as possible, or more nonfiction than we usually do. So if you never read anything nonfiction, you can read one book. If you read 20, try to read 21 or whatever. Just do your thing and read some amazing nonfiction books. And for this month I had great kind of feasible plans, and I'm almost there kinda. So let's go in order. The very first thing that I decided to listen to for Nonfiction November was This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. And this is a nonfiction that kind of recollects a series of experiences, autobiographical experiences from the author, and the author is also the narrator of the audiobook, which is amazing, I always appreciate it. And you go with him through his years in the national healthcare system in the UK, and how it is to be a young doctor, what are you expected to do, what you end up doing, what happens in your personal life while you're doing your job, and a lot of hilarious, generally laugh out loud moments. It was just an enjoyable reading experience. It has very high heights and very low lows, because he also goes through a lot of traumatic things that happen, a lot of difficult decisions that he had to face during his work time, and it has a very deep and meaningful message at the end about the national healthcare system and the privatization of the healthcare system, and just overall the thought that sometimes we as people tend to forget that doctors are people too, and they have their struggles. They are kind of they're failable. I mean, they fail sometimes because they're human, and it kind of draws them down too, and their mistakes are very important ones. They can really affect people's life, and the fact that they have to work so many extra hours and be so tired at the end of the day, and how dangerous it is. It has a lot of these messages, so I think that it was both a very enjoyable experience but also a very informative one to listen to this book. And again, I would highly recommend the audiobook because it's narrated by the author and he's just genuinely funny with his voice. And then after that one, I also listened to the kind of novella, the collection of short stories, again from his medical life, but all set during Christmas. And it was, how was it called? It was The Night Shift Before Christmas or something like that. I will put the title over here, I don't remember correctly, but I listened to that one too, and for me personally it was just like a spin-off of the main book, so the same tone, the same meaning behind it. And really, after reading that book, you have so little faith in humanity and its kind of intelligence overall, because people do so many stupid things, and just stupid at a basic level. I mean, at the end of the book, of the Christmas one, he ends up telling like, please stop putting stuff inside you, at least on the day of Christmas. And by putting stuff inside you, he's not talking about pills. So yeah. That's the general tone, but it was funny, absolutely. So these were the first two ones, and I was just so happy with the choice of reading these two books. Then the next one was again an audiobook, and again it was a funny one, and it was Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs? And that one was autobiographical kinda, because it starts from the experience, the personal experience of the narrator and the writer of the book, and she's a mortician, so a very particular field of work, but it ends up being so funny. The whole book, the concept of the book is that the author is answering some questions that she received from children. So she calls them tiny humans, I believe, and it was so funny to call them like that. And she starts by telling that you expect some deep, meaningful questions always to come from adults, but actually in her field, the most challenging and interesting ones, she receives them from children. And she goes on and answers the questions, going in depth, going through all of the details without shying like from the truths of the ugliest aspect of death, but also by normalizing it and talking about it openly to children. So it's an audiobook that you can definitely listen to with a child, not a very small one because she still uses some scientific words, but if a child listens to this with an adult near, then it will be okay, I believe. And I really enjoyed it because not only she gave some honest, straightforward answers, but she also goes as far as imagining a lot of what ifs if she doesn't know exactly the answer to a question. And it's a bit nerdy, a bit just informative and enjoyable to listen to. I discovered so many things that I used to ignore, so I really liked it, and I really can recommend it. Like, for example, the very first question, one of the very first questions, not the first one, but one of the very first ones was, what happens if you die in space? And so she goes on telling you what are the procedures, but also what could be the procedures and what could happen in the future. And it's just funny and enjoyable to think about the what ifs, even if we're talking about death. And death is normal, it happens all the time, it's sad, it can be devastating, but it's normal. And so we should really try and talk about it more and not to shy away from it, because that actually hurts much more. If you never talk about it and then it happens, it's much more difficult. So yeah, that was my second, but technically third read for Nonfiction November that I listened to. Then I finally read something physically, and it was Mad and Bad Real Heroines of the Regency. And it is pretty self-explanatory from the title, but this book is written by Bea Koch, who is actually a romance writer, and she's also the owner of a romance-only bookshop in America. And this book, I was very excited about it, and at the end I have to tell you that I've not loved it as much as I expected to. It was just like the structure of the book, I wasn't a huge fan of it. It kind of missed the point for me. So what it does, it goes through a lot of biographies of Regency women who were amazing, and some of those, the majority of those actually, I've never heard of. So that's something that I really appreciated, to actually know and get to meet some of these amazing ladies was the high of this book. The low of this book, I think that it was the structure. So you really go through some snippets of their lives. They are put into some categories that the author decides to create at the beginning of the book. And so it was just a bit messy for me. Sometimes she refers to someone and you have her name popping up here and there through many pages, and then you have the explanation of who this woman is only at the end. So I wasn't a fan of the structure. Plus, it wasn't exactly like my kind of nonfiction. I mean, it was documented for sure because the author puts all of the things that she used to create this book, so all the sources at the end of the book and at the end of each chapter. But still, some of the quotes that she uses and things that she says are kind of from movies, recent ones too, so it's not exactly historically accurate, and she knows it. She tells it right through, like straight to your face, but still, I don't know, this kind of was not exactly my cup of tea. So I enjoyed the experience, but to be honest, will I remember this book, like the content of this book in the future in depth? Probably no. Will I remember about this book? Yes, because I still love the idea of talking about women in the Regency and how they had agency, they done what they wanted to, and they fought for their voices and their rights and things like that, but not the most well executed, in my opinion. So that was like a bit so and so. And then the next thing is actually one that I'm currently listening, and it's In the Land of Men. I'm like listening to hour 2 right now, so I'm not that far into it, but I still have 8 more hours to go, so I don't think that I will be able to finish it by the end of November, but who knows, maybe. So far I have kinda no opinion because I'm not hooked by the story, but I still want to see where it will go because the premise is interesting. I mean, who doesn't want to know about the first female editor of a male magazine? It sounds so amazing and I want to know her story, but for now it kinda is meh for me, but maybe it will pick up, so I have high hopes. And the last one that I'm reading is Invisible Women. I've got my book cover on it. But this one is definitely one that hooked me from page 1 pretty much. I even started highlighting some parts, and I usually don't do that often, but I really felt the need to underline, highlight some parts just to see and remember things in the future and to reference it and to go back to it. And right now I'm on page 50, which is not that far in the book, but still, this, I think about it from the day that I started reading it. Every day I think about this book. If I cannot read it one day, I'm still thinking about it. So it kinda pushes the right buttons, it makes me angry, it makes me question a lot of things, and it's, I believe, the point of a good non-fiction book. If it makes you question things and think about the book even later after you finish reading it, or in between the moments when you're supposed to read. So this has a great premise. I believe that I will highly rate it and highly love it by the end of the book. So this is something that even if I've not finished, I highly recommend. And Invisible Women is all about the data bias when we're talking about our reality, our world, like overall, because the majority of it was planned having males in mind and not females, as far as needs are concerned and bodies and just the way we live our life, because it's actually different not only in some specific countries but also overall in the world. There are some things that women tend to do more and men less, or vice versa, and this has a huge impact on so many aspects of our life, and the author goes through those. And some of them I knew before, some of them are completely new for me, so I start thinking about it and I'm like, why I've never noticed it? It's true, but I've never noticed it. So it's so ingrained in our mind that the things that we see around us have always been like that and will always be like that, because who knows? But actually there are alternatives, and she talks about that, so that's a great book. I definitely recommend it, but know that it kinda pisses you and you end up angry sometimes because it's so unfair, certain things that she talks about, but yet they are true and they happen all around us. So be aware of that part. So So overall, Nonfiction November was a huge success for me. I read so many books that I enjoyed, and I'm still reading them, so I hope to finish them by the end of November, or I will finish them in December for sure, because it seems like worth it. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you read some amazing nonfiction books during Nonfiction November. Please let me know down below if you've read anything nonfiction that you really enjoyed during this month or in the previous ones. I really would love to know it, because we never have enough of fiction in our life. We always can have more, so to share is a great way. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very, very soon in my next video. Bye! Ciao!